Taiwan, I'm Laurel Stewart with the news from here in Taiwan and around the world. We begin today in Taipei, where the Taiwan People's Party has voted in a new leader. Huang Guochang received over 96% of the vote, winning the party's online chairperson by-election by a landslide. Huang, who had been the party's acting chair, was up against former TPP lawmaker Cai Piru. The election for the new leader of the country's third largest party was held to replace founder Ko Wen-je. Ko resigned as chairman in January while being detained incommunicado on corruption charges. Huang's term in office will last until the end of 2026. Prosecutors in Taichung are considering manslaughter charges after the initial investigation into a deadly blast at a department store found it may have been caused by a gas explosion. Wesley Lewis reports.
Looking for answers in an investigation into what caused a deadly blast at a Shinkong Mitsukoshi department store in Taichung that killed 4 people and injured 39 others. The fire department's initial inspection found it was a gas explosion that ripped through the 11th and 12th floors of the building, which were under renovation.
现场发生的时候，我们有派同仁上去调查，它消防设备是关闭的。我们在现场评估，初步认定应该是气爆，就是瓦斯气爆的因素所造成的。那不过确切的一个真正的原因，还是要等检察官来做一个裁示这样。
The investigation revealed that the fire safety equipment around the blast site had been illegally shut off before the explosion, and that the renovation of the 2 floors had not been approved. Possible safety violations that could lead to fines of nearly $37,000 US. Now, prosecutors are looking into manslaughter charges for those who may be responsible.
相验结果判定4名死者多因头胸部外伤、胸腹部钝挫伤，导致多重器官衰竭死亡。本件事故相关人员是否涉及刑法之过失致死、过失伤害及公共危险等刑事责任，专案小组将会尽速调查。
One day after the blast, Premier Zhuo Rongtai visited Taichung, where he urged central and local authorities to work together to confirm the building's structural safety. And on Saturday, President Taichung visited a Taichung hospital where injured people are receiving treatment. There, he promised the government assistance and a thorough investigation. In the wake of this blast, the department store has been ordered to suspend their operations. Shinkong Mitsukoshi also set up a special hotline, which they say will assist the families of the deceased and injured. For now, cleanup operations have begun at the blast site, while mourners have set up a makeshift memorial just outside. But as investigations into the blast continue, residents in Taichung remain shaken, still reeling from Thursday's events. Klein Wong and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
Japan's government has announced a solution to the soaring price of rice, releasing its emergency stockpiles. Laurel tells us more.
Across Japanese cities, sold-out signs dot restaurants as record-high prices hit one of the country's staple foods, rice. 2024 was a year of record heat, record tourists, and panic buying over threats of typhoons and megaquakes. Demand for rice soared, and with that, the price surged to more than 80% from the year before, becoming unaffordable for Japan's residents.
買う頻度を下げて米やっぱり袋麺みたいなのとかやっぱうどんとかはお手頃なのでうどんとか焼きそばが多いですね。
他まあ全てのものがやっぱり上がってるっていうのがもうここ今まででないぐらい上がってるっていう感覚がありますね。はい。ずっと今までデフレっていうのがありましたんで、はい。
たまに買うんですけど高いんでちょっと値段見てやめちゃったりとかしますね。はい。
And it's not just Japan's residents feeling the strain.
びっくりしたのがお米がもう市場にないっていうことで、知り合いの飲食店の方からお米ないですかっていうふうに頼まれて、それでお米をねお届けできた時にはもうめっちゃ感謝されたっていう。
To combat the steep price of rice, Japan's government has announced a solution, releasing 1/5 of its emergency stockpile, just over 200,000 tons of rice, to stabilize the market. But it may not be enough for rice retailers.
普通これだけの状況になって緩和するにはもっと極端にですねそれこそ倍ぐらい出さないとやっぱり緩和しないんじゃないかなと私は思ってるんですね。だから多分21万トンだと特にうちみたいな零細企業には多分お米は降りてこないとは思ってるんで。
This is not the first time Japan's government has tapped into its rice reserves, but it is the first time they are for distribution issues. The government now has 1 year to replenish their stockpile, while the rest of the country waits for the price of this staple food to finally go down. Ryan Wu and Laurel Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
Dozens of China-focused NGOs and labour rights groups have halted work and laid off staff following the freezing of US government aid. The funding freeze is part of US President Donald Trump's efforts to slash government spending. Organisations monitoring dissent and labour rights abuses are among those affected. Many of these groups face stiff legal restrictions when operating in China and have come to depend on aid from the US. For more on how these funding freezes will affect the work of NGOs in China, Jeremy Olivier spoke with Bethany Allen, Head of China Investigations and Analysis at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute.
The Trump administration has frozen nearly all foreign funding as it seeks to drastically reduce federal spending. How has this move impacted NGOs doing work in China?
There are many programs and organizations that have received grants from the State Department for all different kinds of work. And there's I would call it an entire ecosystem of nonprofits that work on China from outside of China that are quite dependent on those grants from the State Department. And since those have been frozen, dozens of organizations are in crisis. They're having to lay off staff. They're facing imminent closure, and their work, even if they aren't at this time facing imminent closure, is already being damaged, and in some cases irreparably. These kinds of organizations play a crucial role in our information space about what we know about China. They tally local protests in China. They document human rights abuses. They document the Uyghur genocide. They track Chinese media censorship. And they do things on a really granular level that really no one else does.
How is it that these groups have become so reliant on funding from the U.S.?
There's a number of reasons that we've gotten to this place. One of them is that foreign NGOs used to be able to operate in China, but the 2017 foreign NGO law in China essentially made their work illegal, and they had to leave China. A second reason is that they are quite dependent on government funding because the Chinese government, as we all know, uses the power of access to its economy to control what businesses do and say, and what rich people do and say. So why aren't other democratic governments more involved? And that's a complicated answer. Other democratic governments, for example, in the European Union, have scaled back their own funding for pro-democracy work over the past 10 years as well. I think there was a sense that the US was very reliable and would continue to fund this, and so it didn't really matter. But what we've seen is that in one fell swoop, because of one government's actions, this entire system of vital work is really in danger of dying, and there will be nothing left in its place.
What is the impact to the US and other Western countries of losing the visibility into China that these organizations provide?
So the reason that this information is so valuable, and certainly it's valuable on its own merits, it's incredibly important to understand what's happening in China, how people are suffering, what the government there is actually doing, because of course the Chinese government maintains one of the world's most sophisticated censorship regimes to prevent information from leaving China or from being collected in the first place. But why does that matter for us, for people who don't inherently care about China? And it matters because the point of China's censorship regime, the point of it trying to prevent negative information about China from leaving China is because it wants to present its system as the best system in the world. It's a one-party authoritarian state. And Beijing's big pitch to the world is that this system is at least an equal alternative to democracies and is probably superior. And it's really hard to prove that that is false, that Beijing is lying and using deception to make its case, if we don't have access to facts. And if we can't prove that Beijing is wrong, if we can't prove that its system actually is deeply flawed, then what is the whole point of fighting for democracies or even having democracies ourselves?
That was Bethany Allen from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Palestinian militant group Hamas has released another 3 hostages from Gaza in exchange for over 360 prisoners from Israel. The 6th exchange between Israel and Hamas is part of a ceasefire deal that's held since mid-January. The deal was at risk of collapsing when Hamas accused Israel of blocking aid to Gaza and threatened to halt hostage releases. Israel called up reservists and placed its forces on high alert to prepare for a possible resumption of fighting if Hamas failed to release more hostages by Saturday's deadline. The Asian Winter Games this year, hosted in Harbin, China, have officially ended, with Taiwan taking home its first ever medal in the event. Bryn Thomas has this report.
The Asian Winter Games in Harbin ends with Taiwan's ice hockey goalkeeper Xu Tzu-ting carrying the national team's flag in the closing ceremony. Taiwan, competing as Chinese Taipei, made history with its first and only medal ever at the Games, with speed skater Chen Ying-chu claiming bronze in the women's 100-meter speed event, clocking 10.51 seconds and finishing third behind South Korean skaters Lee Na-yeom and Kim Min-sun. It's a victory that led to Taiwan ranking 8th out of 32 competing countries, tying with Thailand. The country also made history fielding teams in women's curling and ice hockey for the first time. Xu, currently studying at Canada's Brock University, led Team Taiwan to face off against the Republic of Korea in women's ice hockey. Despite losing 2-3 in that match, the team achieved a solid result of 2 wins and 2 losses, finishing 5th overall. The team said the experience was a valuable learning opportunity.
女子冰球从2014年成军至今也超过10年了，协会这几年当中持续的与教练团跟代表队保持良好的沟通与讨论，才能有目前的成绩。对于此次的整体表现来说，我们是觉得表现得相当好了，并超出教练团出发前所设定的目标，尤其是对上韩国队的赛事。虽然很可惜啦，是以1分之差落败了，但对于教练团与球员们是一个非常难能可贵的经验。
But competing in China's northern city did not come without controversy. Taiwan sent its largest ever delegation of 67 athletes to the Games, but the team was welcomed as China Taipei rather than their official name Chinese Taipei. It's a difference of a single Chinese character, but one that can be seen as emphasizing China's claims over Taiwan. Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council protested, saying it was an intentional move to belittle Taiwan and a violation of the Olympic model. Despite the difficulties Taiwan faces competing as a nation on the world stage, it will still have the opportunity to build on its historical achievements at the next Asian Winter Games in 2029, held for the first time in Saudi Arabia. Patrick Chen, Sandy Chi, and Bryn Thomas for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we go to the Venice Carnival, where people are gathering in St. Mark's Square to celebrate. I'm Laurel Stewart. Take care and see you next time.
From industrial parks in Taiwan to here in Vietnam, we're bringing you the latest in tech and business news right here on TaiwanPlus News.